In today's video, I shall be discussing the four heavenly kings Sakata Gintoki, Katsura Kotaro, Takasugi Shinsuke, and Sakamoto Tatsuma, who, when they were only teenagers, raised an army and went to war against the Amanto, Earth's alien invaders. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers all the way up till the end of the Shogun assassination arc. Though I have watched the entirety of Gintama, I'm not going to go into any information that's revealed after that. Just in case there are some people who haven't watched the whole thing yet, which I understand, it's quite long. Let's get into it. I'm going to focus mostly on Katsura, Sakamoto, and Takasugi because I'm going to give Gintoki his own video. But just briefly, let's talk about the Shirayasha, aka the White Yaksha, whom I love dearly. He is given this nickname because of his intense swordsmanship and fighting style. A Yaksha is a kind of demon, and white because, he wore white and he's got the silver hair, so that fits. He's also got maroon, kind of red-brown eyes, and he's taller and broader than most of the other characters. I don't know if this is a weird thing to say, but I really like Gintoki's size. A lot of men in anime can be quite slender or thin, and he feels more solid, if that makes sense. I love big strong men, which is why I love early JoJo so much. But I do also love the slender kings, I think I just might like all men, guys. I think I just like all men. Anyway, we don't really know where Gin came from or what happened to his parents, but we do know that Yoshida Shoyo found him scavenging a battlefield when he was just a little boy. Shoyo basically adopts Gintoki and they travel together as he goes around teaching children and forming schools. I think it's safe to say Shoyo is the first person to ever show Gintoki affection, that he can remember anyway. Later, little Kotaro and little Shinsuke join the school after they become disillusioned with the military school they're attending. Best teacher in the world, Shoyo encourages them to search for their own path to becoming a samurai and uncover what it means to each of them. All three boys adore their sensei and go to war to retrieve him when he's taken from them. Gintoki is a little rough around the edges with his unfortunate habit of digging his nose and his ears and eating too much sugar. He also gambles away significant portions of the money he makes doing odd jobs with Shinpachi and Kagura. He also often drinks way too much and throws up so many times. He's basically an expert at dealing with hangovers. But enough about his flaws. He is also loyal, kind, a surprisingly deep thinker, and helps those weaker than him, or who just need his help. He is a great guy once you get past the nose digging and pachinko. The first person from his past that we meet is Katsura, who he insists on calling Zura. And I admire Katsura's dedication to correcting him or anyone else that calls him anything other than Katsura. We eventually discover that there's a reason why Gin calls Katsura Zura, and when it's revealed, it's really, really sweet. And if you haven't gotten to that part yet, I recommend you keep going. Back in the war days, he was referred to as the noble youth of madness. Given this name for his poise in battle, he was also mocked as runaway Kotaro because he preferred to strategically retreat than suffer mass casualties. During the war, Katsura would do the best he could to ensure their survival, whereas Gintoki and Shinsuke were a little more about the glory. When we first meet Katsura, he seems like a serious guy. Kinda sinister, kinda extreme as far as being a rebel terrorist type person. He tries to get Gintoki to help him take down the Bakufu, but he refuses, and eventually Gin gets him to become more of a moderate and less extreme type of terrorist. Which I think is the first of many sincere, changing hearts and minds speeches that Gintoki gives. As the series progresses, Katsura reveals himself to be, just like everybody else, a badass idiot. Most of his appearances are comedic and hilariously dramatic. And then there's Elizabeth, who is, he's Katsura's best friend, partner, and confidant. I honestly wish we had more episodes that focus on Katsura and Gintoki going on adventures together because I like their dynamic. I love that Katsura and Sakamoto, especially Katsura and Sakamoto together, force Gintoki into the straight man role. Their level of clownishness overwhelms him and he becomes the Shinpachi in the trio. Something I noticed about Katsura while making this video is how similar his look and appearance in the present is to Shoyo's. I don't know if this is on purpose, but I like the thought of Katsura channeling his sensei through his dress and demeanor. Well, maybe not in his demeanor. During the Benizakura arc, we see Gintoki fight all out for the first time. Like, this is the first time we really see what he is capable of. And the same goes for Katsura, who it was feared died at the beginning of the storyline. Also, I found Gin's refusal to believe Katsura was dead to be very touching. I also think Shinsuke was upset when he found out that his underling had killed his old friend, but that might be wishful thinking on my part. But the two have known each other their whole lives, so I don't think it's an unreasonable assumption to make. We do get to see his more serious sides, like when he spends time with the noodle lady and falls in love with her. I know we don't know if he actually falls for her, but that's just my headcanon, okay? I love that he calls Kagura leader, that he seems to always have explosives and is known for his ability to break out of prison. I love that when he, Tatsuma, and Gintoki are reunited and go on a space mission, it's because the part-time Elizabeth went missing while the main one was on holiday. During this arc, there's a moment where Sakamoto is suffering with motion sickness and Katsura tells him to focus on the horizon. I remember thinking what an odd thing that was to say when you're on a spaceship, in space. But later, when we have the flashback of how Katsura, Takasugi, and Gintoki met Tatsuma, it makes sense. The three rebels thought Sakamoto was all high and mighty because he kept his gaze raised as he approached them by ship. Like he didn't want to lower his eyes to them or whatever. But after he vomits in Shinsuke and Gintoki's faces... After he vomits in Shinsuke and Gintoki's faces, he explains that he was focusing on the horizon to control his nausea. So that's what Katsura was referring to on the spaceship, and I just love that it connects in that way. And I really love Tatsuma, who during the war earned himself the title the Dragon of Katsurahama. As a proud merchant, he raised money and men for the rebel cause. War is expensive, and without him, our students of Shoyo would have had a much harder time. In Gintama, we first meet Sakamoto when the Oddjobs crew, Kagura specifically, win a free trip into space and they're all on the same ship. Demon Dog Sadaharu treats him rather cruelly, but he perseveres in being optimistic and seemingly oblivious to the giant dog attached to his head by the teeth. I've already mentioned that everyone in Gintama is both badass and an idiot, having some highly comical aspect to their personality. For Sakamoto, It's that despite being a merchant and traveling frequently, he has severe motion sickness, and without his meds, which he often forgets, he throws up near constantly. I love this show, but man, there really is so much vomiting, which is something they acknowledge and lean into. But we can forgive Tatsuma because he's very handsome and the coolest guy in the show. Just look at these shades. They don't define him the way they do Hasekawa. And I love the outfit and his curly hair. I particularly like his hair, and Gintoki's as well. It's the kind of hair you want to run your fingers through. You know what I mean. Sakamoto is also very happy-go-lucky and has a laugh that makes me smile. And honestly, he's not wrong to be so happy-go-lucky, seeing as things often do work out well for him. When Sakamoto recognizes Gintoki, it's such an exciting moment, and you're like, yes, we're finally gonna find out about Gintoki's past. But no, maybe you'll find out more in about 200 episodes, give or take. But we do find out that Gintoki wasn't that much different when he was younger. When a teenage Tatsuma expresses his desire to leave the war, that he no longer wishes to watch his friends die, and feels he can help Japan by facilitating relationships and trade between the nation and space, Gin tells him to go. And he holds no ill will towards him, because after all, Gin believes in finding your own path and doing what you feel is right. And I love that Tatsuma gives Gintoki a taste of his own medicine by calling him Kintoki instead of Gintoki, which he hates. Sakamoto and Katsura can rile Gin up like nobody else, and it's so fun when the three of them are together, which doesn't happen often enough for me. However, we do get a fairly long storyline when they go rescue the part-time Elizabeth, and we get little glimpses into the past and how they fought together and relied on each other. They know what each is capable of and trust the other to deliver. Except when Gin was all fired up to fight and Tatsuma opted for a different strategy, choosing instead to bargain and trade like a true merchant. During these negotiations, you can see Gin fighting his ass off in the background, and I really love that little touch of comedy in a kind of serious moment. Later, like much later, we learn that Tatsuma's hand was injured so badly he would no longer be able to wield a sword, which explains why he was always using a gun and why he turned so much of his focus to trading and being a merchant. And it really worked out because he's in a perfect position to help during the final part of the series, which I'm not going to get into. However, what I will say is that during these episodes is when we see Tatsuma at his most serious and crafty. I was really happy he was included in the final arcs. And if you're wondering how exactly he got his hands on ships and a crew, and how he ended up partnered with a fearsome Mutsu, it's because of his luck and charming personality. He was actually captured and held as a slave by a pirate organization Mutsu was a part of. Just by being his awesome self, he gets Mutsu to switch sides and they free the slaves who then become his crew. In a way, Tatsuma is just like Gintoki. In fact, all four of the Heavenly Kings inspire people to follow them and end up building a group of loyal friends and followers around them, just like they did when they were young. Even Shinsuke, who is the main initial antagonist, builds a dedicated group of people around him. He starts off as the main initial antagonist and is the only long-term character who isn't also really silly. He doesn't have a random odd quirk, at least not one that I can think of. From the instant we first see him, Takasugi is engaging. And of course, he has that bad boy je ne sais quoi that makes a man 10 times more handsome than he really is. And I love this purple butterfly kimono and his long shaggy hair. He wears a bandage over one eye, but in the flashback we see him having both of his eyes, so it's like, what's going on here? What happened to his eye? And what happened to put him and Gintoki on opposite sides? What happened that now they're enemies? Takasugi is like Katsura in that even after all these years since their initial war, he's still a rebel. Except he's much more extreme and much less noble. As the series continues and we learn more about his motives, I come to believe that he simply wants to watch the world burn. And of course he does actually say that. He wants everyone to pay for the death of his beloved sensei, and he doesn't understand why Gintoki doesn't want to do the same. Because Gintoki of all people should feel his pain the most. And why, especially Gintoki? I've mentioned in previous videos that Gintoki vs Takasugi is my favorite fight in anime. So let's get into it. Guys, the emotions I felt during this fight, the tension, the devastation, this face-off has been building up for literally hundreds of episodes, and when they finally fight, their intention to kill each other is so tangible, and you really feel this mutual hatred. In the midst of this brutal fight, we have flashback detailing the relationship between Gintoki and Takasugi from the time they were boys. Shinsuke and Kotaro meet Gintoki while all three are bunking school at what I think is a shrine. Katsura and Takasugi are disillusioned with their school and the path in front of them, and they seem to be best friends, which explains why they work together as terrorists and make it even sadder when Katsura is almost murdered during the Benizakura. We see Gintoki step in when the two are being bullied, and then the arrival of Shoyo sensei, who is looking for the missing Gintoki. Shinsuke is immediately taken by Shoyo and sneaks away to his school, where he challenges Gintoki and loses. So he comes again and again, and the two become rivals. He also gets to spend more time with Shoyo and realizes how awesome he is. Katsura eventually comes to the school as well, and the two boys are both kind of enamored by both Gintoki and Shoyo. We see all this heartwarming stuff while Gintoki and Shinsuke beat the shit out of each other and become increasingly covered in blood. In the past, Shinsuke eventually beats Gintoki and the whole school cheers for him, and he starts to feel this tiny sense of belonging. Eventually, the townspeople try to kick Shoyo out, and Kotaro and Shinsuke make the decision to join him and Gintoki on the road. And so, the gang is all together, and Shinsuke and Gintoki become friendly rivals, and they all love Shoyo. And then we watch Takasugi and Gintoki exhaust themselves in their efforts to kill each other. And then we see the end. What exactly happened to their sensei? The school was set on fire, and while Shoyo is taken away, he asks Gintoki to take care of everyone. And this, I believe, is Gintoki's core motivation. And then all the students decide that they want to rescue Shoyo, and so they form an army and go to war. And then, after years of fighting, they lose, and everyone is killed except for Kotaro, Shinsuke, and Gintoki. Shoyo is forced to gaze upon the bodies of his murdered students, and Gintoki is given a horrible ultimatum. Either kill the closest thing you've ever had to a father, the man who saved you and changed your life, or the last of your friends will die. and Gintoki chooses to save Katsura and Takasugi and kill Shoyo. After all, he promised he would take care of them. Shinsuke begs him not to do it and rushes forward to see the look on Gintoki's face. It's the last thing he sees before his eye is injured. And so, he can never forget that look, cannot forget the pain that Gintoki experienced in order to save him. And then we go back to the present, and we see them injured and bleeding, reaching for the last dregs of their energy to slaughter each other. And it's heartbreaking. Truly, I actually cried. Gin killed Shoyo. Guys, can you imagine? The pain he deals with is even more than I would have imagined. And I am so glad that Takasugi didn't die, though he came very close, because I wouldn't want Gin to have to deal with that burden too. We do get a little bit of hope for the relationship between the two when a common enemy interrupts their fight and they work together to fight him, though they are much too injured to do much. I don't want to end this video on a sad note, so let's remember that time Gintoki Sakamoto and Katsura had dinner together, invited by someone they fought with in the war but no one can remember. Tatsuma and Kotaro together are the silliest characters in the show, and that is really saying something. These impossible daydreams about playing basketball and going for drinks? Like, really guys? I love how exasperated they make Gintoki. I really wish we saw more of this trio, to be honest. But this video is getting long, so I'll end it here. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please like, comment, share and subscribe. My next video is going to be on Black Butler, and then we will have a Gintoki focus video.